Happiness is the most widely declared goal in contemporary life. Surveys consistently find that when people are asked what they want most for themselves and their children, happiness ranks at or near the top. The self-help industry, the wellness culture, the science of positive psychology, all of them, in different ways, have organized themselves around the project of helping people achieve happiness more reliably. And yet rates of reported happiness in the wealthiest, most comfortable societies in history have remained stubbornly flat or declined over the period in which all this assistance became available. Viktor Frankl understood why. Frankl made a claim about happiness that contradicts almost everything the modern happiness industry assumes. He argued that happiness cannot be pursued directly. The moment you make it the primary target, the thing you are consciously, deliberately trying to achieve, it begins to recede. You become aware of whether you are happy, and the awareness itself introduces a self-consciousness that interferes with the natural states that produce the feeling. You end up performing happiness at yourself, or anxiously monitoring your level of it, which is precisely not the state in which happiness arises. Frankl had a term for this kind of interference: hyperintention. It is the paradoxical effect of wanting something too urgently, the way trying too hard to fall asleep keeps you awake, or trying too consciously to be spontaneous produces only self-conscious stiffness. Happiness is particularly vulnerable to hyperintention because it is a felt state, and felt states are not well served by effortful self-monitoring. They arise naturally in the right conditions, and the effortful attempt to produce them is itself a condition that works against them. Frankl's alternative was not to give up on happiness but to reorient toward what actually produces it. His claim was precise. Happiness is not a goal but a byproduct. It is an effect that follows from living in a certain way, specifically, from living in genuine engagement with meaning. When a person is genuinely absorbed in work they care about, when they are in real relationship with people who matter to them, when they are responding honestly to what their specific situation is asking of them, happiness tends to arise as a natural consequence of that engagement. Not guaranteed, not constant, but real and sustainable in a way that the directly pursued version never is. This is what Frankl meant when he quoted the poet Kierkegaard: "The door to happiness opens outward. You cannot push it open by pressing harder against it from inside. It opens when you move towards something beyond yourself, when you turn your attention outward to a task, a person, a question, a cause that genuinely commands your engagement. In the act of that outward turning, in the self-forgetfulness of genuine absorption, happiness enters, through the side door, as it were, while you were busy with something else." Frankl observed the inverse of this in what he called the existential vacuum. People who had organized their lives around the direct pursuit of pleasure and happiness, who had filled their days with entertainments, comforts, and stimulations designed to maximize the felt quality of experience, often reported the deepest emptiness. Not because pleasure is bad, but because pleasure pursued as the primary goal produces a particular kind of diminishing return. Each peak experience needs to be followed by another, slightly more intense one, to maintain the level of felt satisfaction. And over time, the whole enterprise feels increasingly hollow, because the self that is pursuing pleasure has never been given anything genuinely worth caring about beyond its own satisfaction. The person who invests in meaning, who commits to a task, a relationship, a value, will experience more happiness, over the course of a life, than the person who pursues happiness directly. Not because they were trying to be happy, but because they were trying to be faithful to something real. And fidelity to something real, sustained over time, generates a depth of satisfaction that no amount of optimized experience design can manufacture. Frankl also addressed what happens when the meaning-oriented life includes significant suffering, as it inevitably does. He did not claim that meaning produces an uninterrupted experience of positive emotion. A person committed to a genuinely demanding task, a relationship that requires real sacrifice, or a cause that involves real risk will experience difficulty as well as fulfillment. But Frankl believed that this kind of life, engaged, committed, responsive to what matters, is more truly happy in the deep sense, and more psychologically durable, than a life spent in the management of pleasant feelings. Happiness, in the end, is not something you achieve. It is something you find yourself in, when you have stopped looking for it and started attending to what actually needs your attention. That is Frankl's most elegant and most practical contribution to a culture that has pursued happiness longer and harder than any in history, and found it no less elusive for all the effort. Subscribe to The Psychology of Viktor Frankl to explore more of his timeless ideas.